The prototype for Dai Village in the works of writer Nam Cao. That day is now called Dai Hoa Village, Hoa Hau commune, Nhan district, Nam province.
Cái kho cá này bao tiếng thì được xong hả chị?
Dạ 12 tiếng nha.
Chị kho cá ở đây được bao năm rồi chị?
Thì từ thời bố mẹ kho, còn mình kho là 3-4 năm.
Lúc chị đi lấy chồng chị đã biết kho cá chưa?
Đây là gia truyền bên nhà ngoại.
Bên nhà ngoại chuyển sang bên nhà nội.
Thì ông bà nội không ở đây.
Lại khéo may đúng vào cái chỗ, đúng vào cái địa điểm nhà của bà Kien. Chị tên là gì chị nhỉ?
Tên là Hương ấy.
Chị Hương là chủ cơ sở sản xuất cá kho.
Quê anh Chí. Sở dĩ mình lấy cái tên quê anh Chí vì nhà mình ngay đối diện là Ba Kien.
Một tháng thì mình ra lò bao nhiêu lồi để chị?
Cái này thì cũng tùy theo đơn đặt hàng. Như là mỗi ngày thì khoảng 5 đơn riêng. Đơn.
Em thấy biết là nhiều điểm họ kho bằng cá chấm thường, thì mình thì thường kho bằng loại cá gì nào chị?
Nhà mình là 100% cá chấm đen, không có cá chấm thường.
Đấy nha chị Hương nha.
Không bao giờ kho cá chấm trắng, tất cả là chấm đen hết.
Một lồi này cho nhiều ớt không chị?
The village is not only famous for its specialties of braised fish and bananas, but also for memorabilia related to the characters, Pheo, Thino, Ba Kien, as well as mysterious and naughty stories, truth from the work of writer Nam Cao delight.
Tết năm nay thì có bán được tốt như mọi năm không chị?
Năm nay thì khi Tết thì số lượng người dùng vẫn đông, bởi vì là nhu cầu quả làm quà biếu.
Hầu như mình có lượng khách quen tương đối rồi.
Tương đối nhiều.
Cảm ơn chị nhé.
Trong tác phẩm Làng Vũ Đại ngày ấy của nhà văn Nam Cao, Chí Phèo và Thị Lở đều là những con người khốn khổ dưới đáy xã hội. Họ là nạn nhân đáng thương của xã hội phong kiến thối nát, phải chịu đựng những định kiến khắc nghiệt. Chấp nhận làm tay sai cho Bá Kiến, Chí Phèo từ một anh canh điền hiền lành, lương thiện đã trở thành con quỷ giữ làng Vũ Đại. Thị Lở là người đàn bà xấu xí, nhà lại có mà hủi nên bị mọi người trong làng xa lánh, sợ hãi. Họ nhìn Thị Lở như một cái gì đó rất tởm. Hai con người khốn khổ bị cả xã hội trôi bỏ ấy, tuy mang những khiếm khuyết lớn về mặt ngoại hình, nhân tính, nhưng lại là mảnh ghép hoàn hảo cho nhau. Trong một lần uống rượu say gặp Thị Lở ngủ quên tại vườn chuối, Chí Phèo và Thị Lở đã có một đêm sống như vợ chồng. Và buổi sáng hôm sau, khi tỉnh cơn rượu, anh Chí đã bị cảm. Vì thương cho người yêu mình, Thị Lở đã nấu bát cháo hành mang sang cho anh Chí giải cảm. Hành động ngỡ như hết sức bình thường này lại có ý nghĩa vô cùng quan trọng, thể hiện một tình yêu thương của Thị Lở với Chí Phèo, đánh thức con người lương thiện bên trong anh Chí. Tình yêu của Thị Lở và Chí Phèo diễn ra thật tự nhiên. Họ nhìn thấy ở nhau những giá trị tốt đẹp mà định kiến của người dân làng Vũ Đại không thể trông thấy. Chí Phèo và Thị Lở đã có một khoảng thời gian ngắn chung sống hạnh phúc với nhau. Có thể thấy cả anh Chí và cô Thị đều trân trọng đối với tình cảm này. Từ khi quen Thị, anh Chí ít uống rượu hẳn, và chị Thị Lở cũng hay cười hơn. Trước sự phản đối của bà cô Thị Lở, thái độ giận dữ của Thị Lở, Chí Phèo đã quyết định giết chết Bá Kien. dùng dao tự tử để chấm dứt bi kịch không lối thoát của cuộc đời mình. Ngày nay, có dịp trở về với làng Vũ Đại, chúng ta không khỏi ngỡ ngàng trước sự đổi thay ở nơi đây, và đặc biệt là món cá kho làng Vũ Đại. Đó là món ăn truyền thống được người dân ở làng Đại Hoàng kho, đặc biệt là những dịp Tết, hầu như nhà nào cũng kho. Món ăn này có trước cả khi nhà văn Nam Cao viết những câu chuyện về làng Vũ Đại lên, trước kia không ai gọi nó là món cá kho làng Vũ Đại. Sau này, khi tác phẩm Làng Vũ Đại ngày ấy của nhà văn Nam Cao được trở lên phổ biến, thì cá kho làng Vũ Đại cũng từ đó phổ cập đến khắp cả nước cũng như ra nước ngoài. Thưa quý vị và các bạn, hiện tại thì tôi đang có mặt tại ngôi nhà Ba Kien.
The road to Dai Hoa Village is wide and wide. Ba Kien's house, a symbol of wealth, luxury, and cruelty, is now small, nestled in a banana garden, grass growing below the knee. That house is now only the size of the farmer's kitchen in Dai Hoa Village. The narrow alley, the grass is dense through the small gardens. The trees are luxuriant, leading to the house where the tragedy happened in the past. The guide said the house was deserted. Others said it was sometimes inhabited. The villagers did not know because 30 years ago, since the tragedy happened, few people dared to set foot in that alley, let alone enter the hut in the middle of the deserted garden to see if anyone came to live or not. There are many strange rumors, ghosts, charms related to that gloomy, painful land.
Dãy nhà chính còn hai dãy nhà ngang, hai bên cạnh quay vào nhau thành hình chữ U, và trước là lối đi bên tay phải. Nhưng trong quá trình nhiều năm thì hai dãy nhà ngang xuống dốc.
Until now, stories about the house Ba Kien are still only passed down by people. It seems that everyone here knows the full history of this filmed house. Right at the house on a land of nearly 1,000 square meters, we met Ms. Tran Thi Nhan and her husband, the housekeeper. She said that the elderly in the village still tell the story of this house, that the first owner of the house was old man Kahan. Mr. Han is a rich merchant around the 1910s. He hired nearly 20 famous carpenters in Cao Da and Fulainan to work for a few months to finish. The house has a special design, which is structured in the style of overturning the threshold of the threshold, the ship with 7 keys and the top of the buffalo. The house has 3 compartments according to Vietnamese tradition, 4 rows of columns with a total of 16 iron pillars. The foot of the column is supported by a rock that is an elaborately carved green stone, 99% similar. The roof is covered with only one type of tile. In the style of stilts, the 2 ends of the roof have a square match. It's been over 100 years, but it still hasn't broken down. The door joins the table. On the porch there is a row of strips, also known as sheets, to protect against sun and rain, made of wood. All the wood of this house is iron. On the couches, trusses and bowls are carved many words of grapes and dragons, especially on the roof upper building. There is a grape inscription about the exact time of the year when the house was built. When building a house, people mix molasses, soot into lime and add some other additives to make a lake to build a house. The bricks used to build walls and floors are baked with straw. So even over time, the wall still hasn't peeled off.
Nhưng mà nhà em thì có nghề truyền thống cá kho thôi, còn em không có họ hàng gì với của nhà họ đã cả.
Thế nhà ông Bà Kiến là còn họ hàng anh em gì ở đây không?
Anh ơi, đến đời này là bán nhà này rồi cho nên không liên quan gì đến ngôi nhà này nữa, nhưng mà dòng con cháu của họ là giờ cháu thì cũng 90 rồi anh ạ, giờ chỉ còn dòng hàng chắc thôi. Kể cả là con cháu thì cũng không liên quan gì.
Debt house due to loss of money and sales. When Hen passed away, he left this house to his son. Tran Dai Sham, Uncle Sam passed away, leaving his eldest son Kukat. Kukat is a player who is addicted to alcohol, often takes out a loan. Then Kukat has transferred the house debt to Ba Ben, real name Tren Ba Ben. Uncle Ben is the prototype of the character Ba Kien, built by writer Nam Cao in the work Pheo. And it is also since the house was in the hands of Mr. Ba Ben that the story of the house became special. This is also the reason why the house is associated with the owner's name Ba Kien, which has been passed down for generations. According to the story, Ba Ben once came here to gamble with Kukat and got rid of the house debt from Kukat's own hands. In the last gamble, Kukat put his last fortune to bet and lost. The property went to Ba Ben. Uncle Ben is the prototype of the character Ba Kien, built by writer Nam Cao in the work Pheo. And it is also since the house was in the hands of Mr. Ba Ben that the story of the house became special. This is also the reason why the house is associated with the owner's name Ba Kien, which has been passed down for generations. 146 years of existence. Witness many mysterious stories. According to the story, Ba Ben once came here to gamble with Kukat and got rid of the house debt from Kukat's own hands. In the last gamble, Kukat put his last fortune to bet and lost. The property went to Ba Ben. Also, since this time the house was officially transferred. The fate of the old cat also went down and died in poverty and alcoholism. That day, in the 5 rooms, Mr. Ba Ben divided the remaining 4 rooms for his wives to live in. The main room was used for worshipping and opening a casino all night, and all morning to serve dignitaries in the region.
Nói chẳng bao giờ bền bỉ. Câu nói này hẳn đúng với cụ Bá Bính, bởi những tháng sau đó, mọi của cải, tài sản trong nhà cứ thế mà đội lống ra đi.
He has 5 wives among them. He only allowed the 3rd wife, who was the most favored person, to be allowed to gamble. There is an old saying that wealth from gambling is not durable. Later, also because of gambling, his family's fortune was lost day by the time of his children. Most of the property in the house was wrapped up following the Black and Red killings. People say that Ba Ben's death is still a mystery. It is speculated that he committed suicide because of boredom. That's why his funeral did not ring the drums. After his death, the house was left to his son, Tran Dai Tao, also known as Ben Tao. When Ben Tao lost his descendants, he intended to sell his house. At that time, Tran Lila had intended to buy a house and cut it down to get 16 ironwood columns to build a house, but luckily for the house, Lila was not able to buy it. But the house was bought by Hoa Hau, whose real name is Tran Hoa Hau, an overseas Vietnamese bought to settle down. It is known that the price of the house at that time was 4,500 VN, the equivalent to dozens of gold trees at that time. People in the village still gossip about Hoa Hau's wealth only. His behavior is extremely mysterious. At the end of his life, he did not have a son to follow. The house has since been transferred to a nephew, Mr. Tran Hoa. Later, the Department of Culture, Information and Tourism of Hanam Province decided to buy the house to build the relic. 7 owners. The elderly in the village all said that the house has experienced 7 owners, but there is a common feature of 7 generations of owners. All of them are very rich, but they are gradually falling. Some still died in abject poverty, even before the notorious landowners of the whole region. As for Mr. Tran Hoa, Even though he suddenly inherited the house from Mr. Kai Hau, he also had an extremely tragic fate. It was also after his death that his wife demolished 5 lower houses in this relic complex on a day at the end of 2007. Mr. Hoa was discovered dead in a hanging position in the lower house. At that time, many keeps speculated, thinking that the house astral body had killed this owner. The wife was also too scared to smash the entire side of the house where he committed suicide. Since then, no one dares to stay in this house anymore. The embodiment of Kai Pheo. The story of several generations of owners of Ba Kien house, although there are many mysteries, does not leave a horrifying obsession like the tragedy that happened in Dai Village 30 years ago. If Dai Village is associated with sad stories about human fate, about a tragic case, then the name Dai Hong is associated with a tragedy that is perhaps a rare horror. For people died tragically for unknown reasons. That tragedy happened a long time ago, but every time it is mentioned, the people of Dai Village still shudder in fear. In the story of writer Nam Cao, Kai Pheo killed Ba Kien and then committed suicide. In fact, old Ba's prototype died in poverty, not killed. As for Mr. Kai's prototype, he still lived until he died of old age. However, a few decades later, a terrible tragedy happened that people also believe that the perpetrator was possessed by Mr. That man killed 3 relatives and then slit his stomach and eviscerated his intestines. There are many bizarre, spooky, and enchanting rumors regarding the house and the tragedy, even that day. People also affirmed that it was the embodiment of the character Kai Pheo in the past. In the story of Mr. Tran Duc Thac, brother of the victim in the tragedy, the shocking case once again made him shiver. That day, Mrs. Tran Thi Hon, Mr. Thac's sister and 2 children were killed by her own husband, Tran Van Suu, at the age of 30. Ms. Hon found herself a husband, and in turn 2 beautiful children were born. At that time, the whole village knew that the ox was unruly and hot as fire. Many people also attached the name Kai Pheo to the ox because of his aggressive nature. Horrible tragedy. Tran Van Suu caused a terrible case that killed 3 people at once. Ms. Hon was stabbed in the chest by her husband. Although she ran to the edge of the garden, she was still stabbed in the back. No longer able to run, Hon was slashed in the forehead by the ox. It was this slash that took her life at that time. Hon's 18-month-old baby was still playing on the porch when she was cut to death on the spot by the ox. The frightened sister ran up to hug her father and was killed immediately. It is said that when people ran to the place, the boy was only 18 months old, a toddler lying on the floor, blood flowing in a puddle. The eldest daughter was lying dead. In the position of leaning on her father's armpit, the killer was sitting on the bed, still holding the knife to commit the crime. Seeing someone rushing in, he glared and stood up. The intestine where his wound came out, he still had the strength to hold the knife and continue to cut the intestines and throw them on the floor, before lying on the ground foaming at the mouth and struggling to death. The reason why Ox killed his wife and children has not been clarified, but people said that right after burying the perpetrator and the victims, in Tran Van Su's belongings, a strange amulet was found. The old story has gone far. No one wants to repeat it. Many people vaguely believe that it is because the character in the story, Kai Pheo, has haunted the people here, haunted this house.
Có dịp trở về với làng Vũ Đại, chúng ta không khỏi ngỡ ngàng trước sự đổi thay ở nơi đây, và đặc biệt là món cá kho làng Vũ Đại. Đó là món ăn truyền thống được người dân ở làng Đại Hoàng kho đặc biệt.
Currently, Uncle Ba's house is still there, although it is only surrounded by moss and desolation. The tragedy will eventually go into oblivion. But the mysteries in Dai Village that day were still buried with no solution. Yes, Thank you all for watching and accompanying TKP in today's video. It's a great video, isn't it? What do you think about Thino, Kai Pheo? Is their love great? Please leave your comments.
Khắp cả nước cũng như ra nước